Marcus Hale destroyed lives with just a glance. Everyone trembled before him. But when the young waitress, tears streaming, asked one simple question, silence fell absolute. Those words would change everything forever. The black Mercedes pulled up in front of Bella Vista restaurant with military precision. The engine purred to silence, and for one brief moment, everything seemed to freeze on that busy Tuesday evening street. Inside the establishment, Michael, the manager, felt his stomach drop when he recognized the vehicle through the glass window. His hands began to shake. "No, not possible," he muttered, adjusting his tie for the 10th time in 5 minutes. "Not today. Please, not today." Emma Collins was wiping down table 6 when she noticed Michael's strange behavior. At 28, she'd worked in enough restaurants to recognize panic when she saw it. But she'd never seen her manager, normally so composed, with that expression of absolute terror on his face. "Michael, is everything all right?" she asked, approaching with the tray still in her hands. He didn't even look at her. His eyes remained fixed on the entrance door, like a rabbit hypnotized by a snake. "Marcus Hale is coming here." Emma frowned. The name meant nothing to her. "Who? You don't know who Marcus Hale is?" Carol's voice came loaded with disbelief. She'd appeared beside them, also watching the door with a mixture of fascination and dread. "My God, Emma. Where have you been for the past few years?" "Working," Emma replied simply. "So, who is he?" Carol lowered her voice, though the restaurant was relatively empty. "He's the owner of Hale Incorporated, worth millions. But what really matters is that he destroys restaurants." "What do you mean, destroys?" "He finds fault with everything. Absolutely everything." Carol paused dramatically. "Last month he went to Garden of Delights, complained about the wine temperature, the risotto texture, even the napkin fold. He wrote such a devastating review on social media that the restaurant lost half its clientele in 2 weeks." Emma watched Michael, who was now wiping his sweating palms on his jacket. "And before that?" "Before that was Le Petit Chateau. Before that, Villa Toscana. Before—" Carol sighed. "The list is long. Nobody knows why he does it. Some say it's just because he can. Others think he enjoys watching people suffer." The restaurant door opened. Marcus Hale entered like someone taking possession of conquered territory. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a navy suit that probably cost more than Emma earned in 6 months. His salt and pepper hair was slicked back with gel, and his dark eyes swept the environment with calculated precision. Everything about his bearing screamed power, control, superiority. The restaurant's buzz died instantly. Customers who had been chatting animatedly seconds before now spoke in whispers. A couple at the corner table literally froze with their forks in midair. "Good evening, Mr. Hale." Michael practically ran to the entrance, his voice coming out higher than normal. "It's an honor to have you with us tonight. A true honor." Marcus didn't even look at him. His eyes continued scanning the dining room, cataloging, judging, finding flaws. "Table for one," he said, his voice deep and devoid of any emotion. Of course. The best table in the house." Michael gestured frantically. "This way, please." He led Marcus to the table by the window, the most coveted in the restaurant, which was already reserved for another customer arriving in 20 minutes. But that clearly didn't matter now. Emma watched it all with growing discomfort. There was something deeply wrong about seeing a grown man demean himself that way. Michael was practically bowing, as if in the presence of royalty. "Emma!" Michael's sharp call pulled her from her thoughts. "You're going to serve Mr. Hale." Emma's stomach knotted. "Me?" "Yes, you." Michael approached, lowering his voice to a desperate whisper. "For God's sake, Emma, be perfect. Don't mess up anything. Absolutely anything. Our restaurant depends on it." "Michael, this is ridiculous. He's just a customer." "He is not just a customer." Michael's voice came out louder than intended, making several heads turn. He took a deep breath, trying to control himself. "Please, just be perfect." Emma looked at the man seated at the table. Marcus Hale hadn't even picked up the menu yet. He was scrolling through his phone, completely oblivious to the chaos his presence had caused. Or perhaps not so oblivious. Perhaps he knew exactly the effect he had on people. Smoothing her apron, an automatic gesture she made when nervous, Emma walked to the table. Her heart beat faster than she'd like to admit, but she kept her expression serene. Years working with the public had taught her to control her facial emotions, even when inside she was anything but calm. "Good evening, sir. Welcome to Bella Vista." Her voice came out steady, professional. "May I offer you something to drink while you decide on your order?" Marcus looked up from his phone. For the first time, Emma felt the full weight of that gaze. There was no warmth in it, no curiosity, just cold assessment, as if she were an object on a shelf he was considering buying. "Water," he said, returning to his phone. "No ice, room temperature. With lemon, but not in the water. On the side." "Perfectly," Emma noted in her pad, though she knew she'd never forget that specific request. "I'll be right back." In the kitchen, her hands trembled slightly as she prepared the water. Carol appeared at her side, eyes wide. "So, how is he?" "Cold," Emma responded, cutting a thin slice of lemon. "Like ice in winter. I heard he lost his wife a few years ago. Since then he's been like this." Emma didn't respond. Personal tragedies didn't justify treating other human beings as if they were inferior. Her own life was proof of that. Her mother fighting cancer, the need to work 2 jobs, sleepless nights studying for college. But she'd never used her pain as an excuse to hurt other people. She returned to the table with the perfectly arranged tray, water at the exact temperature, lemon on a separate small plate, linen napkin folded with precision. "Your water, sir." She placed everything gently on the table. Marcus picked up the glass, took a sip. His eyes narrowed. "It's cold." Emma blinked. "Sir, I can assure you it's room temperature." "It's cold," he repeated, placing the glass back on the table with enough force to make the water slosh. "I asked for room temperature. This is cold." The entire restaurant seemed to be watching. Emma could feel Michael's eyes burning into her back. "I apologize. I'll bring another." "Wait." Marcus's voice stopped her. "Do you think my palate is wrong?" "No, sir. Absolutely not." "Then you're admitting your incompetence?" The words were said in a casual, almost bored tone, which made them even more cutting. Emma felt something tighten in her chest. She recognized this. It was the same tightness she felt when watching her mother trying to hide pain during chemotherapy. It was injustice. It was cruelty disguised as standards. "I'll get another water immediately," she said, keeping her voice controlled. In the kitchen, Michael intercepted her. "What did you do?" "Nothing. The water was room temperature, I'm sure." "Doesn't matter if you were sure. If he said it was cold, it was cold." Michael ran his hands over his face. "Please, Emma, please, just do what he asks." Emma grabbed another glass, filled it with water that had just come from the tap, probably a few degrees warmer than the previous one. She returned to the table, placed the glass in front of Marcus. He didn't even look at her. He picked up the glass, took a sip, and grimaced. Too warm now. Something inside Emma began to crack. She saw this for what it was. A game. A test of power. It had nothing to do with the water temperature. It was about control. About humiliation. "Sir, I brought the water exactly as you requested." "Are you questioning my judgment?" Marcus finally looked at her, and there was something dangerous in those dark eyes. "You, a waitress, are telling me I'm wrong." The silence in the restaurant was so thick that Emma could hear her own heartbeat. Every person present was witnessing this moment. Michael looked ready to faint near the reception desk. Carol had her eyes wide with horror. "No, sir," Emma forced the words out. "I'll bring another." On the third attempt, Marcus declared the water acceptable, though his tone suggested he still wasn't satisfied. Emma waited patiently while he examined the menu with deliberate slowness, turning pages as if each dish were a personal offense. "The filet mignon," he said finally. "Rare, but not bloody. With asparagus, but only the tips. No stems. Roasted potatoes, no garlic. And a green salad. No tomato, no onion. Just organic lettuce." Emma wrote down every detail, double-checking. "Anything else, sir?" "Red wine. Let me see the wine list." She handed him the wine list, watching as Marcus examined it with critical eyes. Finally, he pointed to one of the most expensive on the list. "This one. And make sure it's at the correct temperature this time." The sarcastic emphasis on the last words made some people in the restaurant laugh nervously. Uncomfortable laughs, like people who laugh at a bully because they're afraid of being the next target. Emma took the order to the kitchen, where Chef Bruno waited with a tense expression. "He ordered the filet?" He did. God help us. Bruno began preparing the meat with care normally reserved only for special events. You know he's going to find something wrong no matter what, right? I know. Then why aren't you more nervous? Emma looked at the chef, a 50-year-old man who had seen everything in his decades of cooking. Because I'm tired of being afraid of people who use money as an excuse to be cruel. Bruno stared at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Your mother raised a brave daughter. 30 minutes later, Emma returned to the table carrying the most perfect plate she'd seen come out of that kitchen. The filet was at the exact point between rare and medium, succulent and aromatic. The asparagus gleamed with fresh butter. The potatoes were golden to perfection. She placed the plate before Marcus carefully, as if handling fine crystal. He didn't thank her. He picked up his fork and knife, cut a piece of meat, chewed slowly. His face remained completely expressionless. Then he spit the piece into the napkin. The gesture was so unexpected, so deliberately shocking, that Emma stepped back. Around the restaurant, people gasped. This, Marcus said, pointing at the plate as if it were garbage, is inedible. Emma looked at the meat. It looked perfect. Sir, may I ask what's wrong? What's wrong? Marcus leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. Everything. The temperature is incorrect. The seasoning is crude. The presentation is amateurish. He paused, his eyes fixed on her. But the biggest problem is the complete lack of competence of your establishment. Sir, Emma began, but Marcus cut her off with a wave of his hand. Take this away, and bring your manager. Clearly you don't have enough authority to handle this situation. It was in that moment, looking at this man who used power as a weapon, who delighted in others' discomfort, who transformed a simple dinner into a spectacle of domination, that Emma felt something inside her shift. She'd spent the last 5 years of her life smiling at rude customers, accepting disrespectful treatment because she needed the job, swallowing her dignity because bills didn't pay themselves. But as she looked at Marcus Hale, at his expression of cold superiority, at the way he expected her to bow, Emma realized something important. Some battles were worth more than a paycheck. Sir, she said, her voice coming out clearer than expected. May I ask you a question? Marcus raised an eyebrow, clearly unaccustomed to being interrupted. What? Emma pointed at the plate of food. Do you really think there's something wrong with this food? The silence that followed was different from the previous ones. This one had weight, expectation, as if everyone in the restaurant was holding their breath at the same time. Are you calling me a liar? Marcus's voice was low, dangerous. I'm asking, Emma responded, if the problem is with the food, or with something much bigger. And in that instant, with all the restaurant's attention focused on the two of them, Emma saw something flicker in Marcus Hale's eyes, something that looked suspiciously like surprise. Marcus Hale didn't sleep that night. Lying in the king-size bed of his penthouse apartment, he stared at the ceiling while that waitress's words echoed in his mind like a bell that wouldn't stop ringing. Is the problem with the food, or with something much bigger? He turned on his side, then on his back, looked at the digital clock. 3:40 in the morning. The city below slept, but he couldn't close his eyes without seeing that face. Not the face of someone afraid, not someone angry. It was the look of someone who saw him exactly as he was, and that disturbed him more than he wanted to admit. He got up, walked to the panoramic window. Chicago stretched before him like a carpet of blinking lights. His empire, his achievements, everything he'd built after Helena. He closed his eyes hard. He wasn't going to think about that now. But as he looked at his reflection in the glass, he saw a man he didn't completely recognize. When had he become this? When had he started measuring his worth by the fear in others' eyes? Do you find fault with the food, or with life? Those simple words had torn something inside him, as if someone had turned on a light in a dark room where he'd been living for years, comfortable in the gloom. 3 days later, Emma was finishing her shift when Carol came running through the kitchen door, her face pale as paper. He's back. Emma didn't need to ask who. By Carol's tone, by the way she gripped the doorframe, it could only be one person. Where's Michael? Day off. You're in charge today. Carol swallowed hard. Emma, he's asking to speak with you. Emma's heart jumped, but she kept her hands steady as she dried the last glass. In recent days, she'd mentally prepared herself for 2 possibilities, being fired or never seeing Marcus Hale again. She hadn't considered a third option. Did he say what he wants? No, just asked for the brown-haired waitress who served him on Tuesday. Emma removed her apron, smoothed her uniform. Her reflection in the kitchen mirror showed a tired woman. She'd worked double shifts the past few days to cover her mother's medical expenses, but there was determination in her eyes. Where is he? Same table. Upon entering the dining room, Emma noticed the atmosphere was different. Some customers glanced at Marcus with poorly disguised curiosity. A couple whispered. The girl at table 5 held her phone as if about to record something. Marcus sat in the same position as before, but something about him seemed different. She couldn't define exactly what. Perhaps it was how his shoulders weren't so rigid, or how his hands weren't occupied with his phone, but simply resting on the table. Good evening, sir. Emma approached, keeping her voice professional. I heard you wanted to speak with me. Marcus looked up. For an instant, brief as a blink, she saw something vulnerable cross that normally controlled face, but it disappeared too quickly to be sure she hadn't imagined it. Sit down. It wasn't a request, but it also wasn't an order. It was something between the two. Emma looked around. Sitting with a customer during working hours was against the rules, but Carol waved discreetly from the kitchen door, as if saying, do what he asks. She pulled out the chair, sat with her back straight. How can I help you? Why did you say that? The question came direct, without preamble. Emma didn't pretend not to understand. Because it was true. You don't know me. How can you know if it was true or not? I don't need to know someone to recognize pain. The words came out before Emma could filter them. I recognize it because I know what it's like to carry a wound that nobody sees. Marcus was silent for a long moment. His fingers drummed softly on the table, a nervous gesture that contrasted with his always controlled posture. You're not afraid of me. It wasn't a question, but Emma answered anyway. No. Should I be? Everyone is. Maybe that's exactly the problem. Emma leaned slightly forward. Respect doesn't come from fear, Mr. Hale. It comes from choice. People may fear you, but that doesn't mean they respect you. It just means they're afraid of losing something. She saw his jaw contract. For a second, she thought she'd gone too far. That he'd explode, demand to speak with the owner, destroy the restaurant with a devastating review. But that's not what happened. My wife used to say something similar. His voice came out lower, almost a whisper. She said I confused power with respect. It was the first time Marcus Hale had said anything personal. Emma felt the weight of those words, the pain hidden between the lines. She sounds like she was a wise woman. She was. A pause. She died 3 years ago. Cancer. I'm sorry. Don't be. Marcus straightened in his chair, and for a moment the mask of coldness tried to return. But it didn't quite fit, like clothing that no longer suited him. I didn't come here to talk about that. Then why did you come? The question hung in the air between them. Emma saw several emotions cross Marcus's face. Confusion, resistance, and something that looked dangerously like vulnerability. I don't know. He let out a laugh without humor. I spent the past 3 days trying not to think about what you said. It didn't work. And what did I say that bothered you so much? Everything. Marcus ran his hand through his salt and pepper hair, messing up the perfect styling. You looked at me as if you could see through me. And you didn't like what you saw, but you also didn't pity me. I don't pity anyone who chooses to hurt others just because they're hurting. Emma's words were harsh, but her tone was gentle. But I recognize someone who's trying to protect themselves the only way they know how. A couple walked past the table, obviously slowing down to try to hear the conversation. Marcus ignored them completely, keeping his eyes fixed on Emma. You're very young to speak as if you've seen so much. I'm 28, and I've lived enough to know that suffering doesn't choose age. Emma thought of her mother, of the hospital bills, of the sleepless nights. And I learned we have 2 choices when life hurts us. We can let it harden us, or we can let it teach us compassion. And you chose compassion. I chose survival. Compassion came with it. Emma paused. Mr. Hale, may I ask a question? I think you're past the point of asking permission. One corner of Emma's mouth curved in an almost smile. Why do you do this? Why go to restaurants just to find fault? The question hung in the air like smoke. Marcus looked away for the first time since the conversation began, fixing on some undefined point beyond the window. Because it's easier. Easier than what? Than feeling. The words came out so quietly Emma almost didn't hear. Then connecting. Then risking caring about something or someone and losing again. Emma felt something tighten in her chest. Not pity. It was recognition. Recognition of someone who had built walls so high they'd forgotten what it was like to live without them. So, you chose to live behind glass. It wasn't a question. Where you can see everyone, but nobody can really touch you. Marcus looked back at her, and this time there was something raw in his gaze, as if all the layers of protection had been momentarily removed. And you? His voice had a new intensity. Why are you still kind when you've probably suffered enough to have every excuse in the world not to be? The question caught Emma off guard. Nobody had ever asked her that before. She thought of her mother, fragile in the hospital bed. She thought of the bills piling up. She thought of all the times she'd smiled at rude customers because she needed that job. Because I learned that kindness isn't weakness. Emma met his eyes. It's the hardest thing to maintain when the world gives you every reason to give up on it. And every time I choose to be kind, even when it's difficult, I win. Not the person being rude. I win. Win what? My humanity. My dignity. Emma paused. My soul. The silence that followed was different from the tense silence from before. This one had weight, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the silence of two people recognizing something true between them. At a nearby table, an elderly woman dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. Her husband squeezed her hand gently. Two waitresses whispered by the kitchen entrance, but their expressions were soft, moved. Marcus was the first to break it. I behaved terribly toward you. It wasn't a question, but Emma confirmed with a small nod. Yes, you did. And yet you're here, talking to me as if I were human. You are human, Mr. Hale. You just forgot for a while. Emma saw something shine in his eyes, something that could be emotion, but it disappeared before she could be sure. Marcus. His voice came out hoarse. Call me Marcus. Only if you call me Emma. For the first time since entering the restaurant 3 days ago, Marcus Hale smiled. It wasn't a big smile, just a small curve at the corner of his mouth, but it completely transformed his face. Suddenly, Emma could see the man he'd been before pain hardened his features. Emma. He tested the name, as if trying something new. Beautiful name. Thank you. My grandmother was named that. Mine too. Marcus paused, and something changed in his expression. She used to say that a name carries the weight of whoever wore it before, that when we inherit a name, we also inherit the responsibility to honor it. Your grandmother sounds like she was wise. She was the only person who really saw me. Marcus looked at his own hands, as if seeing them for the first time. She'd say I became exactly the type of man she taught me not to be. The raw honesty of those words hung in the air. Emma didn't try to soften them with empty words of comfort. Instead, she let the silence speak. A waiter passed nearby, then came back, hesitant. Emma made a discreet gesture for him to continue. This moment, whatever it was, shouldn't be interrupted. May I ask you a question? Marcus finally broke the silence. Yes. Why are you still here? Why didn't you send me away? Why didn't you spit in my face and walk out? Emma thought for a moment before responding. Because I recognize someone who's drowning. And because contrary to what you might think, reaching out to someone who's drowning doesn't pull you down. Sometimes it reminds you that you know how to swim too. Marcus was silent for so long that Emma thought perhaps she'd said something wrong. But when he finally spoke, his voice was different, softer, more human. Helena, my wife, she would have liked you. What was she like? Strong, like you. Marcus smiled again, but this time there was sadness in it. She never let me get away with my nonsense, always called me out when I was being an arrogant idiot. She sounds like she was incredible. She was. A long pause. When she died, it was like a part of me died with her. The part that knew how to be human, how to feel, how to care. But it didn't die, Emma said gently. It just fell asleep. There's a difference. How do you know? Because if it had died, you wouldn't be here now. You wouldn't have spent 3 sleepless nights thinking about what a waitress said. You wouldn't have come back. Emma leaned forward. The good part of you is trying to wake up. You just need to let it. Marcus stared at her for a long moment, and Emma saw entire battles happening behind those dark eyes. Pride fighting vulnerability, fear fighting hope, isolation fighting connection. I don't know if I remember how. Then learn again. Emma's words were simple but carried weight. One day at a time, one choice at a time, one person at a time. The clock on the wall marked almost midnight. The restaurant was empty now except for the two of them and Carol, who watched from afar with an expression of pure amazement. Marcus stood slowly, and Emma did the same. For a moment, they stood there, two strangers who had somehow shared something deeply intimate without ever having touched. May I come back? The question came out hesitant, vulnerable in a way that didn't fit the powerful man who'd entered the restaurant days ago. The restaurant is open every day, Emma said, but there was a soft smile on her lips. That's not what I asked. I know. Emma held his gaze. Yes, Marcus, you can come back. He nodded, then walked toward the door. But before leaving, he turned one last time. Emma? Yes? Thank you for not being afraid, for not pitying me, for just seeing. And then he left, leaving Emma alone in the empty restaurant, feeling that something had changed. Not just for him, but for her too. Because sometimes the greatest courage isn't in facing our own demons. It's in holding up a mirror for someone else to face theirs. And that night, without knowing it, both had begun a journey that would change their lives forever. Marcus returned the following evening, and the next, and the one after that. At first, the staff watched with fear and fascination. Carol sighed when he entered. Chef Bruno peeked through the kitchen window, expecting the explosion that never came. Even Michael observed from a distance with growing confusion. The man who entered now wasn't the same one who had spit food into a napkin. Emma noticed the subtle changes, how he thanked her when she brought the menu, how his eyes no longer scanned the restaurant searching for imperfections, how he said, please, words that had been lost from his vocabulary for years. It was on the 5th visit that Marcus arrived different. Emma noticed immediately. There was tension in his shoulders, a worried line between his eyebrows. Coffee? She asked, approaching. She'd stopped asking if he wanted to see the menu. Coffee-accompanied conversations were what they both needed. Please. Marcus ran his hand over his face. Strong, very strong. Emma returned with 2 cups. Sitting with Marcus was no longer against the rules. Michael had turned a blind eye since realizing the feared critic wasn't destroying the restaurant. Difficult day? Emma placed the cups on the table, sitting across from him. Revealing day. Marcus picked up the cup but didn't drink. He stared at the dark liquid. I went to a meeting with my company's directors. And? I saw myself from the outside for the first time. He took a sip. I saw the fear in their eyes, how they chose each word carefully, walking on a minefield. Nobody disagreed with me, even when I was clearly wrong. Emma waited. Marcus needed space to process his thoughts. Behind them, a woman at table 8 glanced over, then quickly looked away. The young waiter passing nearby slowed his steps, pretending to adjust napkins on an empty table. Emma noticed, but said nothing. My vice president made a mistake in the presentation. Marcus's voice got lower. It was obvious, but nobody said anything. They were more afraid of irritating me than of hurting the company. What did you do? In the past? A bitter smile. I would have humiliated him in front of everyone. Pause. But today I saw Helena in his eyes. Emma touched his hand lightly on the table. Marcus looked at where they touched as if it were something precious. A busboy dropped a tray in the kitchen. The clatter made several heads turn, but Marcus didn't even flinch. His attention remained entirely on Emma. What did you see? I saw how she looked at me when I was cruel. That mixture of disappointment and sadness. Marcus intertwined his fingers with hers. I saw how I was destroying people because I was destroyed inside. And what did you do? I called a break. Called my vice president alone. Marcus squeezed her hand and apologized. Said I'd created an environment where people were more afraid to speak than to make mistakes. Emma felt tears sting. How did he react? He cried. Marcus's voice came out choked. A 50-year-old man, father of 3, cried in my office. Said he had nightmares about work, that he'd developed an ulcer, that his wife begged him to resign. The silence was heavy. Around them, the restaurant continued, plates clinking, low conversations. But in their bubble, Only that raw truth existed. At the bar, the bartender paused mid-pour, his eyes drawn to their table. Carol stood frozen by the kitchen door, hand over her mouth. Even customers at nearby tables had gone quiet, sensing something profound unfolding. I did that. Marcus looked at Emma. I turned my pain into poison. How many people did I destroy? How many lives did I ruin? But you see now. Emma squeezed his hand. We can't change the past. We can only choose who we'll be from now on. What if it's too late? Then you start where you are. Emma spoke with conviction. One person at a time. One day at a time. Marcus looked at her, and Emma saw entire battles happening behind those dark eyes. Pride, fighting vulnerability. Fear fighting hope. How did you become so wise being so young? Emma let out a humorless laugh. I'm not wise. I've just suffered enough. Pause. My mother has cancer. Advanced stage. She saw pain cross Marcus's face. Emma. That's why I work here at night and at an office during the day. Her voice trembled. Every morning I wake up not knowing if she'll be better or worse. Marcus squeezed her hand hard, tears shining in his eyes. An elderly couple at the corner table exchanged glances. The woman reached for her husband's hand across the table, holding it tight. The young waitress serving them had to turn away, blinking rapidly. And yet you're kind to rude strangers like me, especially to you. Emma smiled through tears. Because I know nobody wakes up deciding to be cruel. It comes from pain, from fear of feeling. Helena died in my arms. The words came out in a whisper. She was 41. We had plans. We were going to travel the world, adopt a child. His voice broke. We were going to have a whole life. And you did, Emma said gently. It just wasn't as long. But that doesn't make it less real. In the final months, she was so weak. Marcus looked beyond Emma, lost in memories. But she smiled, laughed at the doctor's bad jokes, thanked the nurses, made me promise I wouldn't let her death turn me into something bitter. And you broke that promise. Marcus nodded slowly. A waiter approaching their table stopped mid-step, reconsidered, and quietly retreated. Michael, watching from his position by the host stand, mouthed something to Carol. She shook her head, eyes glistening. I broke it. When she closed her eyes, I felt like part of me died too. I decided if I had to live with this pain, everyone would have to feel pain. But she didn't want that. No, she wanted me to live, to love, to continue being the man she met, the one who believed power could lift people, not destroy them. Emma saw when something inside Marcus finally broke. It wasn't collapse. It was liberation, like a dam yielding after years of holding too much water. I miss her so much. The words came out in a sob. Every day. I wake up and for a second I forget she's gone. Then I remember and it's like dying again. The tears rolled freely. Marcus didn't even try to hide them. Around them, the restaurant had gone completely silent. Every person present felt the weight of this moment. The elderly woman was crying openly now. Two businessmen at a center table stared into their drinks, jaws tight. Even the cook had emerged from the kitchen, standing in the doorway with his hand over his heart. I know, Emma whispered. I know that pain. I live with it, knowing one day my mother won't be there anymore. How do you bear it? By loving while I can, being grateful for each moment. Emma wiped her tears. Loving means accepting we'll lose, but never loving. That's not living. That's just existing. Marcus was silent. Then he squeezed her hand with intensity. I don't want to just exist anymore. Then live. Emma held his gaze. Even if it hurts, even if it means risking your heart. Something passed between them. Understanding, promise, possibility. Two survivors realizing they didn't need to drown alone anymore. The bartender quietly set down 2 glasses of water at their table, then retreated without a word. Carol approached with a box of tissues, placed it gently between them, squeezed Emma's shoulder once and walked away. Can I tell you something? Emma broke the silence after several long moments. Anything. When you first came here, I saw a man using cruelty as armor. Someone who'd rather be feared than risk being hurt again. She paused. But now I see someone brave enough to feel again. That takes more strength than you know. I don't feel brave. I feel terrified. Good. Emma smiled softly. Fear means you're alive again. It means something matters. Marcus lifted her hand to his lips, kissing it gently. The gesture was so tender, so unexpected, that Emma's breath caught. "You matter," he whispered. "You matter in a way that terrifies me and makes me feel alive at the same time." In the weeks that followed, Emma watched Marcus change. He greeted the valet by name, asked Carol about her children, complimented Chef Bruno, left generous tips for the entire staff. The biggest changes were in small details. One evening, Emma saw him helping an elderly woman at the market next door. Another time, he stopped to give money to a homeless person. The restaurant's atmosphere shifted too. Customers no longer tensed when he entered. Some even smiled, nodded greetings. The staff moved naturally around his table instead of tiptoeing. "He's different," Carol commented, watching Marcus chat with another customer. "Like he's a different person." "He's not a different person," Emma said. "He's the person he always was, remembering how to be." "You did that." Carol looked at her with admiration. "You broke through his walls." "I didn't break anything," Emma corrected. "I just showed him the walls were only keeping him prisoner." It was a few weeks later, after Marcus had quietly reached out to every restaurant he'd destroyed, after he'd transformed his company culture, after he'd begun the long work of making amends, that he arrived with an expression Emma couldn't quite read. "I did something today," he said before she even sat down. Emma sat slowly. "What?" "I went back to all those restaurants, every single one." Marcus spoke quickly, apologized, offered compensation, but more importantly, wrote honest reviews praising them. How did they react? Some refused to see me. I don't blame them. A sad smile. But others accepted. One owner cried and hugged me, said he'd lost faith in humanity, but I'd given back a piece. Emma didn't hold back her tears. "Marcus, it's strange." He looked at their joined hands. "I spent 3 years thinking pain was my identity, but I discovered I was wrong." "What did you discover?" "That when you remove the anger, the fear," Marcus looked up, "what remains is who you really are." "I'd forgotten, until you reminded me. You chose to change. You gave me reason to." Marcus squeezed her hand. "You gave me hope that change was possible." Emma smiled through tears. "Helena would be proud." "I know." Marcus smiled back without sadness, just gratitude. "It's like she can finally rest because I'm finally at peace." In that moment, Emma understood something important. Healing didn't mean forgetting. It meant learning to carry pain without poisoning everything around it. And sometimes the greatest healing came from helping someone else heal too, because we're all broken people trying to find our way. And sometimes we just need someone to hold our hand and remind us we're not alone in the journey. The call came during the afternoon shift. Emma was taking the order at table 12 when her cell phone vibrated in her apron pocket. Normally she'd ignore it, restaurant rule number 1, but something about the insistent pattern made her hesitate. Once, twice, 3 times. "Excuse me," she murmured, stepping away with her heart already racing. The number was from the hospital. Her hands trembled as she answered. "Hello? Emma Collins? This is St. Luke's Hospital. Your mother had a complication. We need you to come immediately." The world lost sound. Complication. Immediately. Those words every daughter of a terminal patient feared. "I'm on my way." She hung up, stood frozen for a second that felt like hours. "Emma?" Carol's voice brought her back. "You're pale. What happened?" "My mother. I need to go. Now." She didn't wait. Ripped off her apron, grabbed her purse. Her movements were automatic, trained by months of constant fear. Michael appeared, alarmed. "Emma, what happened?" "Hospital. My mother." Her voice broke. "Go. Go now." The taxi seemed endless. Emma watched the city pass, people walking normally, laughing, and felt irrational anger. How could the world keep spinning when hers was falling apart? Before she could think twice, her fingers were dialing. "Emma?" Marcus's voice came loaded with concern. "Is everything all right?" "No. My mother. The hospital called. I'm heading there, but I don't know." "Which hospital?" "St. Luke's." "I'll be there in 15 minutes." "Thank you," she whispered. Marcus arrived in 12 minutes. Emma was in the waiting room, sitting in a hard plastic chair, staring at the floor. Her hands were clasped together tightly, knuckles white. He sat beside her without a word, his presence solid and comforting. "How long have you been waiting?" he finally asked. 20 minutes. I don't know." Emma looked at the clock, but numbers didn't make sense. They said the doctor would come. He will. What if it's too late? What if the last thing I said was, "See you later," instead of, "I love you"? Marcus took her hand. Your mother knows you love her. That doesn't need words. Did you say it to Helena? I did. They were the last words we exchanged, but she told me she already knew. Not from words, but from actions. From how I looked at her, how I was there. Emma looked at him, tears flowing. What if I'm not ready? Nobody ever is. But sometimes it's about giving the person we love permission to rest. A doctor entered the waiting room. Young, Emma thought. Too young to be holding news of life or death. Family of Mary Collins? Emma stood so fast she got dizzy. Marcus stood beside her. I'm her daughter. How is she? Your mother had a cardiac arrest. We managed to resuscitate her, but it was difficult. The doctor paused. She's stable now, but weak. Very weak. Can I see her? You can. She asked to speak with you. Said there were things she needed to say. Marcus squeezed her hand. Do you want me to go with you? Emma wanted to say yes, but this moment belonged to her and her mother. Wait here. Please. Don't leave. I'm not going anywhere. The room was small, filled with beeping machines and hospital smell. Mary was in the bed, so small under white sheets. Tubes coming from her arms, face pale against the pillow. When Emma entered, she opened her eyes and smiled. That smile Emma had known forever. My daughter. Emma pulled the chair beside the bed, taking her mother's fragile hand. Mom, you scared me. Sorry. Seems my heart is as tired as the rest of me. Don't talk like that. You'll get better. Mary squeezed her hand with surprising strength. Emma, my brave Emma, we need to talk. We can talk after you rest. Now, sweetheart, please. Emma swallowed the lump in her throat, nodding. I want you to listen without interrupting. Can you do that? Another nod. Mary took a deep breath. I've lived a good life, not perfect. I had pains, losses, difficult moments, but I had you, and you were the greatest blessing the universe could give me. Mom, let me finish. I spent these months watching you sacrifice yourself for me. 2 jobs, no social life, no time for yourself. I watched you consuming yourself, fading each day. Emma's tears fell hot. I'd do it all again, 1,000 times. I know, and that's why I need to tell you this. Mary pulled her hand close to her heart. When I'm gone, and it'll be soon, we both know it's true, I want you to promise something. Anything. Promise you'll live, not survive. Live, love, risk, be happy. How can I be happy without you? The same way you learn to breathe after a punch to the stomach. It hurts. God, how it hurts. But you breathe. And each breath gets easier. I don't know if I can. You can, because you're my daughter. And because there's someone out there waiting for you. Someone who looks at you the way your father looked at me. Emma blinked, confused. Mom? The man in the waiting room. I saw how he held your hand. He's in love with you. It's not like that. Lying to your mother on her deathbed, Emma. The tone was teasing. I saw. And you saw too, you're just afraid to admit it. I'm scared. Scared of loving and losing again. Ah, my daughter. We'll always lose. It's the price of loving. But the alternative, never truly loving, that's the real loss. How are you so wise even now? Because I'm dying. And when you're dying, all the nonsense disappears. Only the essential remains. And the essential is love, Emma. That's all that matters in the end. Emma bent over the bed, her forehead touching her mother's hand while she sobbed. I'm still not ready to let you go. I know, but you'll have to be. And when the moment comes, I want you to let me go in peace, without guilt, without regret. They stayed like that, crying together, holding each other, memories passing silently between them. When Emma pulled away, Mary was smiling through tears. Promise? Promise you'll live? Emma wiped her tears. I promise. And promise you'll give that man a chance. He has good eyes. Despite everything, Emma laughed through tears. You don't give up, do you? Not in the final stretch. Now let me rest and send him in. I want to meet the man who brought light back to my daughter's eyes. Marcus entered with the reverence of someone entering a church. Mary watched as he approached. Mrs. Collins. Marcus stopped beside the bed. It's an honor to meet you. The rich man who has time to wait in hospitals, Emma told me about you. I hope good things. She told me you were lost, that she helped you find yourself. Mary paused, gathering strength. But what she didn't say is that you helped her find herself too. Marcus looked at Emma, then back at Mary. Your daughter saved my life in ways she doesn't imagine. Then do me a favor. Anything. Save hers too. When I'm gone, she'll want to give up. She'll bury herself in work and pain. Don't let her. Make her remember there are still reasons to smile. Mom, Emma began, but Mary raised a trembling hand. Promise? He didn't hesitate. I promise. Good. Now leave. Let this old woman rest. Emma kissed her mother's forehead. I love you. I'll always love you. I know, sweetheart. I always knew. Outside the room, Emma collapsed. Marcus caught her, holding her while she cried into his chest. Cried for everything she was losing. Everything she'd never have. I'm sorry. I didn't want to drag you into this. You didn't drag me. I chose to be here. And I'd choose 1,000 more times. Why? We're practically strangers. You know that's not true. Sometimes we meet someone and it's like recognizing a part of ourselves that was lost. Emma looked at him, saw the sincerity in his eyes, the vulnerability he no longer hid, the strength that came from finally allowing himself to feel. I'm scared. Scared of losing my mother. Scared of being alone. Scared of feeling something for you and having to go through this pain again. I'm scared too. Terrified. But I learned something. Fear means something matters. And you matter, Emma. You matter in a way that scares me and makes me feel alive at the same time. My mother said you're in love with me. Your mother is a very wise woman. Are you? In love with me? Marcus didn't answer with words. He leaned in and kissed her forehead with tenderness that made new tears spring to her eyes. Then he pulled back just enough to look into her eyes. I'm in love with the woman who had courage to confront me when everyone was afraid. In love with the kindness she maintains even when life is cruel. In love with the strength she shows when she's breaking inside. He wiped a tear from her face. So yes, Emma, I'm completely hopelessly in love with you. The hospital hallway disappeared. The sounds faded. Only the two of them existed, and that truth suspended between them. Me too, Emma whispered. I think I'm in love with you too, and it terrifies me. Then let's be scared together. And maybe we'll discover that love is worth every second of fear. Emma leaned against him, letting herself be held. And for the first time since the hospital call, she felt that maybe she could survive what was coming, because she was no longer alone in the storm. And sometimes, that makes all the difference. Mary passed away on a Sunday morning, when the sun came softly through the hospital window, and birds sang outside as if life continued normally. Emma was holding her hand when it happened. There was no drama, no machines beeping or doctors running. It was simply silence. One moment her mother was breathing and the next, she wasn't. Mom? Emma squeezed her hand, waiting for a response that wouldn't come. Mommy? A nurse entered, saw the scene, and her face softened with professional compassion. She touched Emma's shoulder lightly. I'm sorry, dear. But Emma couldn't move. She stayed there, holding that hand that had held hers during her entire life. When she learned to walk, when she fell from her bike, when her heart was broken for the first time, when the world seemed too heavy to carry alone. She went peacefully. The nurse spoke gently. No pain. It's what all mothers would wish for the end. Peace. The word should bring comfort. But all Emma felt was an emptiness so deep it seemed bottomless. Marcus was in the waiting room. He hadn't left in the past 3 days, sleeping in uncomfortable chairs, eating bad sandwiches from the hospital cafeteria, refusing to leave Emma alone. When she appeared in the doorway, he knew immediately. It was written in every line of her body, in her fallen shoulders, pale face, red eyes but dry from crying so much. He stood, and Emma simply walked into his arms, burying her face in his chest. She didn't cry, didn't speak, just let herself be held while the world continued spinning indifferently around them. It's over, she finally whispered. She's gone. Marcus held her tighter, kissing the top of her head. I'm so sorry. So sorry. She told me to live. Those were practically her last words. Emma pulled back slightly, looking at him. How do I live when half of me just died? You breathe. And tomorrow, you breathe again. He wiped a tear that had escaped. And one day, without realizing, you'll discover you're living again. The days that followed passed in a nebulous blur. There was paperwork to sign, funeral arrangements to make, people to notify. Emma moved on autopilot, doing what needed to be done because someone had to do it. Marcus was always there, not in a suffocating way, but present, taking care of practical details she didn't have energy to resolve, making sure she ate something, even if just a few bites, holding her when the pain became too great. The funeral was small. Some neighbors from the building where Emma lived with her mother, colleagues from Mary's old job, Carol and some restaurant staff. Michael sent a huge arrangement of white flowers. Emma stood beside the casket, looking at her mother's serene face, and felt something break inside her. But it wasn't a bad break. It was like something that was holding on tight could finally let go. "Thank you," she whispered. "For everything. For every sacrifice, every hug, every lesson. I'll miss you every day of my life. But I'll live, Mom, like you asked me. I'll live." 3 weeks later, Emma returned to the restaurant. Carol greeted her with a tight hug. Bruno came out of the kitchen to squeeze her hand with glistening eyes. Even Michael, normally so controlled, had to discreetly wipe his eyes. "Welcome back," he said, voice thick. "It wasn't the same without you here." Emma tied her apron, feeling the familiar weight of the notepad in her pocket. For a moment, she thought she couldn't do it, that the weight of grief would be too great. But then she remembered her mother's words. "Promise you'll live?" "Which table needs me?" she asked, and her voice came out steadier than expected. The evening began slowly, but Emma discovered something surprising. There was comfort in routine, in the familiarity of taking orders, serving tables, smiling at customers. It was as if, doing these normal things, she was proving to herself that life continued, that she could continue. Marcus appeared around 8. Emma saw when he entered, and something in her chest calmed. She'd grown accustomed to that presence, to that constancy. "Hello," he said, and there was something different in his eyes, a new intensity. "Hello." Emma gestured to his table, the one by the window that had become their table. "The usual?" "Actually, I need to talk to you." "Can you sit for a minute?" Emma looked around. The restaurant was quiet. Michael nodded that it was fine. She sat. "How are you?" Marcus asked, taking her hand across the table. "I don't know." Raw honesty. "There are moments I'm fine. Then, out of nowhere, I remember she's gone, and it's like dying again. Is that normal?" "It's normal. It'll be like that for a while." He squeezed her hand. "But I promise, it becomes more bearable. Not less painful, but more bearable." Emma nodded, not trusting her voice. "I have something to show you." Marcus pulled an envelope from his pocket. "Your mother gave me this, at the hospital, when you stepped out of the room for a moment." With trembling hands, Emma opened the envelope. Inside was a letter written in her mother's shaky handwriting. "My dear Emma, if you're reading this, it means I've finally left. Don't be sad for too long, my love. I lived a good life, and you were the best part of it. I asked Marcus to give you this letter because I know there will be days when the pain seems too great, days when you'll want to give up. Close yourself off. Let fear win. When those days come, I want you to remember, life isn't measured by the years we live, but by the moments that take our breath away, by shared laughter, by held hands, by touched hearts. You gave me so many of those moments, Emma, and now it's your turn to live those moments for yourself. Don't be afraid to love again. Don't be afraid to be happy. Don't carry my passing as a burden. Carry it as a reminder that every moment is precious and shouldn't be wasted. The man giving you this letter looked me in the eyes and promised to take care of you. I saw truth in that promise. Let him in, my love. Let him show you there's still beauty in the world. Live, Emma. Don't survive. Live. Love fiercely. Laugh loudly. Cry when you need to. Be kind. Be brave. Be you. And know that wherever I am, I'll always be proud of the extraordinary woman you've become. With all my love, your mother Emma finished reading with tears flowing freely. She folded the letter carefully, as if it were the most precious treasure in the world, which it was. She knew, she whispered, knew I'd want to give up. Mothers always know. Marcus wiped a tear from his own face. And she was right. About everything. Emma looked at him, really looked. Saw the man he'd been when they met, cold, cruel, using pain as a weapon, and saw the man he was now, vulnerable, gentle, brave enough to feel. "We've changed," she said, amazed. "We've both changed so much. You taught me it was possible." Marcus touched her face tenderly. "You taught me that transformation isn't betrayal to our pain. It's honoring it by not letting it define us. And you taught me there's still goodness in the world, that it's still worth believing in people." They stayed there, looking at each other, and Emma felt something shift inside her. It wasn't the pain disappearing. She knew the longing for her mother would always be there, a constant companion. But it was space opening for other things too, for joy, for hope, for love. "Your mother made me promise something," Marcus said, "that I'd make you remember there are still reasons to smile. And will you keep that promise? Every day for the rest of my life. If you'll let me." Emma's heart raced. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I love you. Completely. Desperately." He held both her hands. "I'm saying I want to be by your side on good days and difficult days. That I want to be the person you call when you need someone. That I want to build a life with you. Marcus, I'm not proposing marriage. Not yet." A soft smile. "I know you need time to process, to heal. I'm just saying that when you're ready, whether it's a month from now or 5 years, I'll be here, waiting." "Because you're worth every second of waiting." Emma looked at this man who had entered her life like a storm and become her anchor. She thought of her mother, of Helena, of all the people who loved and lost and still found courage to love again. "My mother said something to me at the hospital." She spoke, voice trembling with emotion. "She said we'll always lose the people we love, that it's the price of loving, but that the alternative, never truly loving, that's the real loss." She was right. "So don't make me wait 5 years." Emma smiled through tears. "Because I love you too, and life is too short to waste a single day without living completely." The kiss they shared was gentle, reverent, full of promise. Around them, the restaurant continued its rhythm, plates clinking, low conversations, life happening. And for the first time since her mother's death, Emma felt it was okay to be happy again. At a nearby table, an elderly woman dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. Her husband squeezed her hand gently across the table. The young waitress serving them had to turn away, blinking rapidly. Even the bartender paused mid-pour, a soft smile crossing his face. 6 months passed like seasons changing. Slowly at first, then suddenly, the world looked different. Emma stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the simple but elegant dress she'd chosen. It wasn't white. White seemed presumptuous for a new beginning. It was pale blue, her mother's favorite color. Carol entered the room, smiling through her own tears. "You look beautiful. Your mother would be so proud." "I know." Emma touched the necklace that had been Mary's, the only piece of jewelry she owned. "I feel like she's here." "She is. In your heart, in the way you smile, in your kindness." Carol adjusted the veil, "and especially in your courage to begin again." The ceremony was small, intimate, in the restaurant's garden, under a perfect blue sky. Marcus waited at the improvised altar, wearing a dark suit, eyes shining with emotion. As Emma walked toward him, she thought about all the strange turns life had taken to bring them here. A broken man from loss, a woman desperate to save her mother, a chance encounter that changed everything. "Hello," she said when she reached his side. "Hello." Marcus took her hands, and Emma saw tears in his eyes. "You look absolutely stunning." "Thank you. So do you." The officiant began the ceremony, but Emma barely heard the words. She was lost in Marcus's eyes, seeing her own reflection there, no longer the tired waitress trying to survive, but a woman who had faced the deepest loss and chosen to live anyway. "Emma," Marcus said when his turn came to speak, "you taught me it's never too late to start over, that we can transform ourselves, that love is the bravest thing we can choose." His voice failed. "I promise to spend the rest of my life showing you that you made the right choice. That love doesn't mean losing. It means gaining someone to share all moments with, good and bad." Emma wiped her own tears. "Marcus, you found me at my worst moment and showed me there was still light in the world. You taught me that kindness isn't weakness. It's the greatest strength that exists." She squeezed his hands. "I promise to love you with all the intensity my mother taught me. I promise to live, really live, every day by your side. And I promise to honor the memory of those we lost by being happy, because that's what they would have wanted. When they kissed as husband and wife, there was applause and tears from everyone present. But the most moving moment came after, when Emma looked at the sky and whispered, "Thank you, Mom, for everything, especially for teaching me to live." And in that moment, with the sun warming her face and Marcus's hand in hers, Emma finally understood the most important lesson her mother had left. Life doesn't stop when we lose someone. The pain doesn't disappear. The emptiness remains. But alongside the pain, there's also space for joy, for love, for hope. Living doesn't mean forgetting those who left. It means carrying them with us as we continue our journey. It means honoring them by not wasting the days they didn't have. And sometimes, in the middle of our greatest pain, we find our greatest blessing. Sometimes, when everything seems lost, we discover its only changed form. Emma had lost her mother, but she'd gained understanding that love, true love, never dies. It only transforms. Lives in shared memories, in lessons learned, in people we touch. And Marcus had lost Helena, but he'd found purpose again. Discovered that honoring her love didn't mean closing his heart. It meant opening it even wider. As they left the restaurant hand in hand, Emma looked back one last time. She saw Carol wiping happy tears, saw Bruno waving from the kitchen door, saw Michael smiling with pride. And for a brief second, she swore she saw her mother too, not physically, but in essence, in the love that permeated that place, in the kindness that had flourished from so much suffering, in the living proof that transformation was possible. "Ready?" Marcus asked, squeezing her hand. Emma smiled, a genuine, complete, life-filled smile, ready for everything. Because she'd finally understood, living isn't the absence of pain, it's choosing joy despite it. It's loving knowing we'll lose. It's transforming through suffering instead of being destroyed by it. And in the end, all that really matters are the people we love, the lives we touch, and the courage to keep choosing love, even when it's easier to choose fear. Sometimes the cruelest person is simply drowning in pain. And sometimes, a single act of kindness, seeing them, really seeing them, can remind them they're still human. Emma had seen Marcus when everyone else only saw a monster, and in that seeing, she'd saved him. But what she didn't know until later was that, in saving him, she'd also saved herself. Because we're all broken people trying to find our way. And sometimes, we just need someone to hold our hand and remind us we're not alone in the journey. That's what her mother had taught her. That's what she'd shown Marcus. And that's what they would spend the rest of their lives remembering. Love is the only thing powerful enough to heal what pain has broken. Not by erasing the scars, but by giving us courage to keep living despite them. And that is the greatest lesson of all.